Shifting focus now to a super exclusive that we're bringing to you here on CNN News 18, and this is as far as China's dirty tricks department goes. We're now learning that there is a new bio threat that China is developing. We're now looking at a research report that has been accessed here by CNN News 18 that goes on to talk about the new bio threat to the world that is being developed by a research organization that has full support of the CCP, which is the Communist Party of China. This research report, in fact, has been accessed by us here on CNN News 18. It is a 12-page report that we have for you, and I'll be taking you through the details of this particular report. But this is a CCP Neuro strike program that aims to wreak havoc across the world, is what this particular research report goes on to say. This report goes on to talk about how they're enumerating and targeting and collapsing the Chinese Communist Party's Neuro strike report. This is the research that we've accessed for you here on CNN News 18, the details of which are just trickling in. What we're learning as far as this particular report goes is this talks about Neuro strike being a fundamental Chinese Community Party focus, and how this really is unknown to many, but these details are now trickling out. It is a part of the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party's standard order of battle. Not an unconventional set of capabilities only to be used under extreme circumstances, but it is something that China uses on an regular basis, is what this particular report goes on to talk about. It is about bioweapons research that has now come to the fore, which again points to what China is trying to do. Remember, there have alarms that have been raised as far as coronavirus was also concerned, of how it was meant to be a biological weapon that was unleashed on the world. Now we have more details trickling in of a similar pattern that China seems to now be following. Anand Narasimhan, my colleague, joining us, getting us more details and putting this in perspective for us. Now, this report, Anand, we've accessed, goes on to again point to the dirty tricks that China has been resorting to.
The more important aspect is that this is not a disease. This is neuroscience. So they want to influence the thinking itself of an entire population. And they are using it not in extraneous circumstances, but as a regular form of their strategy. So what they are trying to do is whatever programs or platforms which are human-computer interface programs and mass apps. So they may be using any platform that has got mass application circulation, and they will use it to perhaps brainwash, influence, instigate populations and societies. And the research says that they're going to actively use it as a weapon against adversaries like the United States. There is no reason why they may not use it against adversaries like India. And this, of course, they believe, the CCP believes, is a far better technique and a far more effective technique, because you don't have to fire a single bullet and you can destroy societies, populations, or co-opt them. Now, this is also part of data colonization. So one of the aspects that data colonization talks about is that how psychologically you totally influence a particular society and a nation, yes, and or huge amounts of population, and force them to think in a particular direction, and then you ask them and get them to act the way you want them to act without controlling their landmass or territorial aggression. So this is data colonization, and the extended aspect of it is where they are using neuroscience. So it's not, and that's why it's a biothreat. It's a biothreat not because it's a disease for the body, but it's a disease or something affecting your brain, where they will absolutely scramble your brains in a particular manner, that you'll be forced to think in a particular way. A common question that those who advocates of data sovereignty and data colonization ask is that after the 62 war, there has been till Galwan 2020, there have been skirmishes, but never an open conflict to the proportion that the entire nation woke up to it, despite what happened in 86 in Sikkim. Why is it that the generation that's born in the 90s fears China? The generation that's born in the 90s in India, why does it think that China se panga nahi lena chahiye? So this is one of the aspects which they highlight, that why are there soft skills, why are there mass propaganda machineries, why are there apps and their platforms, what they are able to try and highlight or influence an entire population, 1/5 of the world's population, without picking up the cudgels against China, thought unse panga nahi lena. It all changed after Galwan, when we gave them a bloody nose. But till then, they were able to influence generations saying that I want to learn Mandarin, I want to be like China. Chinese, etc., etc. Martial art forms that were practiced in India went to China, but we thought that we have to learn martial arts from them. So these aspects, this is how you try and brainwash or perhaps influence a society.
Yes.
Now they have advanced it to a level where they can send out triggers via the platforms after conditioning a population to a certain extent and give them triggers which will cause strife, which will cause anarchy, or which will help them in their cause of perhaps overcoming an adversary.
And what's alarming, Anand, is that this report also goes on to talk about how this seems to be a standard procedure as far as warfare tactic of China is concerned. It's not used under extraordinary circumstances. This is something they use on a regular basis.
See, this is the aspect. There are certain which are non-proliferation, deterrence, extreme measures. We will, even the most extreme measures, nations have signed on and said they will not press the nuke button. But in this case, China is saying this is part and parcel of thing. Am I going to brainwash an entire society just because it's part of my comprehensive national action? That's the bigger challenge, because the CCP believes that's all right. If I've got to influence, intimidate, and whatever to further the cause, what the CCP believes are the ideals that Mao Zedong put down in 1949, envisaging total dominance or perhaps the dominance of the Chinese authority to the time what it was 300 years ago, then we have a serious problem at hand, and that's how the CCP is currently thinking. They are shifting the dynamics. They are shifting the dynamics from territorial arsenal to playing the mind games in the literal sense.
Mind games is happening as far as China goes. Thank you, Anand, for getting us the latest on that. This is the big story that we were tracking here on CNN News 18. An exclusive scoop, if you will, of the mind games, the war games, games that in a certain dimension are being played by China, something that we now are aware of, something that we now need to be wary of as well. Pathikrit Payne joining us on this broadcast for more perspective. Pathikrit Payne, how do you look at this? Something like this being used as a commonplace warfare by China?
Well, I'm not surprised by it, primarily because even if you look at, the future of warfare would invariably be non-contact warfare. And even though per se biological weapons have been de facto banned across the world, but it is highly unlikely that countries like China or many others have completely given up on it. So if you look at the future, the kind of strides China has made in the area of, telecommunication, IT, even in the area of biotechnology, it is not very surprising that in the future, whether it is virus or any kind of other neuro weapon is used, or electromagnetic pulses are used, it would not be very surprising. Even on the issue of the COVID, there is still a lot of shadow, there's a lot of haze as to where it originated, and most of the fingers still actually point towards what happened in Wuhan, and as to whether all kinds of efforts were made to actually put it under some kind of a blanket as to whether it was genuinely a kind of a bioweapon or not. And I think it's very, very likely it was so. So if you look at the next generation of warfare, the next generation of warfare may not entirely be based on tanks and artillery. It would be something entirely different. Non-contact warfare would not just be about drones or artificial intelligence, but use of all kinds of things that would impact us neurologically. That is very much possible, especially in this era where we are totally and so much hooked on to all kind of telecommunication devices. Whether those can be used or whether any kind of other kind of intermediary would be used for any kind of strike which would impact the nerves primarily, that cannot be ruled out. So there are dimensions of warfare which are completely changing. Today we are witnessing what is called hybrid warfare. The next generation warfare need not be a replica of what used to be in the past. So the possibility of this cannot be ruled out. One last point. Many of these major technological organizations of China, pharma organizations, or organizations dealing with artificial intelligence or next generation technologies are all owned and controlled by the CCP. So the possibility of CCP and PLA actually using this in future cannot simply be ruled out, because this has been something they have been doing from 1980s in terms of developing their capacity.
Absolutely, something that they are using on a regular basis, as far as this report also goes on to highlight. Pathikrit Payne, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. This is an alarming report that we have access to.